All right. So welcome everyone to, I believe this is maybe our sixth webinar, our sixth Farm to School 101 webinar that we've been doing this series from the beginning of the year. These webinars are hosted by the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. Basically, we've been hearing from a lot of you who are on the line today, a lot of great questions and topics, and we decided it would be great to package the highlight information in a series of 101 webinars. And we're really excited about today's. So we're going to be sharing about local foods around the tray, lots of different creative ideas about how you can incorporate local purchasing into all components of your meals. So my name is Erin McKee. I'm the Community Food Systems Program Director at the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. And I support the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Farm to School grants by providing technical assistance to all of you and working on some evaluation. And I'll be sharing a little bit of information with you today. And I'll pass it over to Emily to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Emily Mayer with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. I manage the Farm to School grants that y'all have received. So you've probably seen my emails coming through. So anything having to do with reporting or reimbursements, that's sort of my wheelhouse. So happy to be on the call today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nora Shields Cutler, and I work with Erin at the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy, and I'm excited to share a couple of examples from schools of cool things that they've done sourcing local foods around the tray today.
Great. And we would love to just hear from all of you who's on the line. If you would be so kind as to introduce yourselves in the chat, you can share your name and your location and your role in Farm to School. And then we also have a poll just to kind of get a handle on what types of local purchasing you have done around the tray. And we're wondering, I'll just launch that now and you can fill it out. But we would love to hear from you about what your favorite local food around the tray is that you've sourced, or if you haven't done a lot of different sourcing, what's something that you're thinking about or you'd like to source? We'd love to hear from those of you on the line. Oh, great. And I'd also like to say that I will keep an eye on the chat. If you have questions as we're sharing information, we will keep an eye on those, and then we will have a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar where we'll try to get to your answers. But while you all are filling out the chat and then introducing yourselves in the chat and filling out the poll, we'll just go to the next slide and I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to cover today. So we've done a couple webinars that have been specifically focused on buying local produce, fruits and vegetables, on local proteins, so different meat options. Those are both really popular ways to get started with local purchasing when you're just launching your farm to school programs. But today's agenda, we're going to focus on the different meal components and maybe some more new ideas of things you might add to your local purchasing repertoire. We're going to give you some examples of real items that different districts have been sourcing and some resources that can help you with that. And then we'd love to have all of you share your ideas with each other so we can be a little more informal in this webinar. We would love to collect from you what ideas you have, and then we can share out that information and share resources and ideas with the rest of the farm to school community in Minnesota too. So I'm going to end our poll. We'll get a little sense of, oh, let's see. It looks like, are you all seeing that are you seeing the poll live or no? It looks like it is launched, but it is not recording responses. So I'm going to leave it open for another minute if you all want to answer that question. If it's not showing up for you, I'm sorry about that. But I think we'll will pass. Oh, good. That's showing up. All right. Well, maybe I'll end the poll and I'll share the results.
Okay, all right.
Then you can see.
Come on here, babe.
Great. And while we're looking at that, we'll record that information too. But I'm going to pass it over to Emily to share a little bit about ideas for local foods around the tray.
All right. Thanks, Erin. So what I'm going to be talking about today is just some ideas, kind of sparking some ideas for different types of products that you can have on around your tray, aside from some of like the produce items that are typically easy to source, or some protein items. So I think there will be a slide. There we go. So just some ideas that we've either seen other schools purchasing, or that, you know, can kind of spark some ideas on your end. So a variety of dairy products. So the grant does not cover milk, but there's a lot of other great dairy products that are available that are local. Cheese, yogurt, cottage cheese, butter, cheese curds, lots of fun dairy items that you could incorporate into your meals. We've also seen some schools purchase grains, local grains. So it's like flours, oats, wild rice, cornmeal, wheat berries, things like that. And a variety of legumes have also popped up on some of the lunch trays around the state. We've seen schools who have purchased maple syrup or honey. Those are often easy to procure. And then just kind of curious if there's things, I mean, you did your poll, but if there's things that aren't on this list here that you've sourced from your school, feel free to throw those into the chat. In the Department of Agriculture, we're always available to help you find some vendors who might be selling yogurt that are in your area that you could purchase from. So if you have questions, always feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help you with that. And then just a friendly reminder that this round of grants, the fiscal year 23 grants, are prioritizing emerging producers. So our state target is that 50% of this round of funding, so we had $3.45 million. So at least half of that will be spent on local food from socially disadvantaged or emerging farmers and producers. So just as you're figuring out your plans for the fall, you're starting to connect with farmers. We just encourage you to kind of think creatively, seek out some emerging or socially disadvantaged producers that might be in your area. And the USDA definition of socially disadvantaged would be farmers of color, American Indian or Alaskan Native farmers, women, veterans, farmers with disabilities, young farmers, beginning farmers, LGBTQ+ farmers, or urban farmers. So there's a lot of opportunity to purchase from socially disadvantaged. And if you kind of don't even know where to start, you can definitely reach out to us. We can help you with that, or else oftentimes going to your local farmers market is a great way to kind of start identifying some of the local growers in your area. So just something to think about, throwing it out there as we dig deeper into local foods around the tray this afternoon. So.
Thanks so much, Emily.
Mhm.
And I am just going to go through a few examples. The fine school folks who shared these aren't able to be here today, so you'll have to have me share them, but wanted to share just some ideas that we've seen around the state and around the tray. So first up is Robbinsdale, and as Emily mentioned, cheese curds are something. So they used Redhead Creamery cheese curds and did early in the school year a state fair inspired meal, and so they incorporated local cheese curds as part of that meal. So you can see that meal here. And then this is a little bit of a cheater, because I guess technically it would be a protein and be encompassed, but I think it's something many of us don't think of first with protein. So Mesabi East did walleye, and to Emily's example, they also used local butter, which they added citrus to serve with citrus butter. One cool component, you can see there was a news story on this one for Rachel and Mesabi East. And they had students who helped take the Y bones out for school food service staff. And so just some creative ways. And I know Rachel mentioned they purchased 3 meals worth so they could, reduce that per serving cost with delivery costs and that. So that was just a neat walleye. And then finally, we have Minneapolis Public Schools, and Minneapolis Public Schools, Kirsten shared they during National School Breakfast Week, March 6th to 10th of this year, they served every day a different overnight oats recipe with different fruit on top. And so I thought that was a neat idea. They used both local oats from Askegard Organic Farm and local yogurt from Country View Dairy. And Kirsten has kindly shared her food service scaled recipes. So we'll send that out in the notes with if that's something you'd be interested in trying. She mentioned that she also knows of other producers that are interested in sourcing local oats for schools, including Doubting Thomas Farms. So oats can be, we've seen incorporated various different ways, and overnight oats and then using up, they used up their final fruit was a mixed fruit, and you could use whatever fruit you had left on Friday to have mixed fruit servings. So up here I have they sent home with families, the kind of family scaled recipe, and the school food service recipe is, a little more plain looking, a little more practical focused. So we will send that out in the notes if that's something you would be interested in trying. So I'll pass it to Erin, and she's going to share a couple other examples.
Yeah, I wanted to share, so this was something that we published a little while back, shortly after the USDA updated their meal pattern to have more bean and legume and grain requirements, whole grain requirements. And so we did a report specifically looking at using local grains and legumes in school meals. And even though it is a little bit older, I think it actually has a lot of really good information in there. I hadn't looked at it in a while, and I was like, oh, this is really helpful. So just there are a lot of benefits towards using these items locally too. If you can get them, they have a long shelf life. Sometimes you can freeze them once you cook them, and they're relatively inexpensive. I did see in our report some of our partners, when we were looking at case studies of school districts that had used beans and grains, they had found that the costs were equivalent or could be less expensive, but they expressed that they felt like they had a superior taste and texture and cooking ability, and that it was exciting for their staff. Their staff felt more engaged and excited about being able to use those local products and kind of do some scratch cooking. It can take a little bit more thinking ahead if you're going to do overnight oats or if you're going to cook dried beans. They did say, one of our partners that we had looked at this was in Michigan, but they had actually shared that cooking the local beans from scratch took them less time for their staff than opening and rinsing and recycling the canned beans that they had been using before. And the staff would be able to pre-soak the beans, but they could do a lot of other tasks while the beans were soaking. So it didn't take as much of the dedicated staff time. So it was an option that they really liked. And they also found that the cooked beans that they did from scratch, or the beans that they cooked from scratch, they were able to control the sodium. So it helped them to meet the federal sodium reduction guidelines better than buying the the pre-cooked beans as well. A lot of the different districts that we connected with were using the beans. There are a lot of different ways you can do it. So they were doing baked beans or bean salads. They were doing lots of soups. There was a lot of success that they had with pairing the beans together with other familiar foods. So there was one district that was mixing beans together with ground beef and using it in places where you might use ground beef, like in a taco, for example. And that would help them cut down on the taste or the cost of buying just the meat, but the taste was really good. There was some tension between our kids that hadn't had a lot of experience eating beans going to accept it. So if you mix it together with a meat product, they found that that was helping some of those students that hadn't tried beans before by themselves. And so they had a lot of success by just pairing it together with a more familiar item. And the most common technique that we saw for preparing them was to take the dry beans and soak them overnight and then steam them in a combi oven for 20 to 45 minutes, depending on the recipe. And they found that that was a lot easier than just straight boiling. So just a tip in there, that report, so I linked to that in the chat. It does have some different recipes, and then it has case studies from different schools that had used beans, and it also does have grains in there as well. So lots of different examples and like links to different recipes. So I feel like it's a really good resource that you can check out. I know that, yeah, there was a beef lentil crumble from Montana. That was one where they were making tacos with it. And then the example that we have in there that's from Minnesota was Hopkins, that is focusing on wheat berries. So they were doing delicious sounding lentil wheat berry soup, and they did a salad as well. So you can look in there and get ideas about lots of different creative ways that you can incorporate both the local beans and grains as well, whole grains, into your meals. It was especially, I just think it's so nice. We have like the basic overview, looking at districts around the region and kind of where these grains are available and where the legumes are grown and things like that. But then I think the case studies, I always find it's just helpful to hear from the people on the ground that are actually using these products and capture some of their experience and what's worked for them. So I encourage you to check that out if it's something that you're interested in. And Minnesota, one of the things that we found in there, at least at the time when we made that report, was Minnesota is we are the largest like oat producing state, for example. We have a lot of grains here, and I think we were like in the top 5 of the bean producers. So we have these products here, and it's just another creative way that you might incorporate more local products into your meals. And another thing, so if we go to the next slide, if you're thinking about ways that you can expand your local purchasing, I just love this concept of Minnesota Thursdays. So this is something that a lot of schools have been trying out, but trying to, on the first Thursday of the month, get an entirely local sourced meal, or, as much as you can. You don't have to be absolutist about it, but if you can look at all the components in your tray and try to get those to be completely local, it's a challenge that you can kind of use as a strategy to help you expand your local purchasing, and it can connect you with other districts around the state that are doing that together. We have a couple of photos of actual meals that have been served. So these are from Roseville. This one is from Roseville, but you can see they have the local turkey, they have the local broccoli and the apple and a dessert. And then the next one is from Minneapolis. So they were using the local chicken, the protein, but they also do have that grain blend in there. They have the corn on the cob and watermelon, and they also have a local dessert. And I'm not sure, is that like a popsicle type thing? I feel like it's just really a fun way to connect with it. You can use it as a strategy, and there are resources that can help you kind of think about different ways to expand your local purchasing. So we're just excited to think about all the different strategies that districts have used so far. And then we would love to hear from all of you about your ideas. So I'm going to stop the formal recording, but we're going to have a little bit of time where you can discuss and share with each other and hopefully brainstorm and come up with some new ideas that you might explore in the coming season this fall.